Hey, it's a new day, and we're glad about it. It's a new way, but we're still grounded. Switched up a few things, but not for form or fashion. 'Cause we'll never change the fact our goal is to be saved. So walking by faith, consumed by your amazing grace. It's your renaissance.
Hi, my name is Soni Hayward, and I am co-chair of the Renaissance Church of Christ Women of Faith Ministry. On behalf of the Women of Faith, we would like to say welcome and thank you for joining us this evening as we embark upon the first day of our 2-day Women's Empowerment Conference. The Women of Faith Ministry began over 20 years ago because there was a need for sisters to come together, a need for sisters to develop meaningful bonds and relationships, and a need for sisters to be accountable for one another. As you engage in this powerful conference, we pray that you will be empowered. As you watch this conference, watch with an open mind, because you never know. You might learn something that you never knew, or you may realize something that you never even thought about. Thank you for joining us this evening. Now let's get started.
I love you forever. I love you forever. I love you forever. Lord, say I love you forever. Yeah, I love you forever. I love you forever. Forever. I love you forever. I love you, God. I do. I love forever. Say it again. I love you, God. I love you forever. Wherever you are, you can join us in worship and say, I love you forever. Oh,
ladies. My name is LePage Godfrey, co-chair of the Ministry of Naomi. On behalf of the entire Women of Faith ministry at Renaissance Church of Christ, we extend a very warm welcome to the 2020 Women's Empowerment Conference. Our theme this year is Gracefully Broken, taken from Psalms 34, 15 through 18. We are delighted that you are joining us today for the conference, and we hope that you enjoy every moment. Once again, welcome.
Hi, young ladies of Renaissance Church. I am Patrice Jux, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. I am so excited about our discussion today. We are going to be discussing the importance of mental health and self-care. I'm also going to be teaching ways of releasing all the negative emotions that we hold inside. So come on over and get ready for a laid-back conversation about this topic. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Hi, my name is Dr. Dion Metzger, and I am a board-certified psychiatrist based here in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a specialty in women's health, and I work with women of all ages, from college age all the way up. And my specialty really is working with women in different stages of life and handling stressors and teaching coping skills. I really want to use this time for us to learn in terms of what we can do to take care of ourselves. It all comes from we can't fill somebody else's cup from an empty cup. And as the women in the family, very often we're the center, we're the foundation, we're the support. So I'm the person who's going to be reminding you that you need to take care of yourself in addition to taking care of all these lovely people in your family or you're in a relationship with. Today is about you and what we can do to help you kind of stay not only on top of things, but also healthy while you're doing that. So this was quite an honor to be asked to be a part of this Women's Empowerment Conference because it's something that I advocate for all the time. So first, what I wanted to talk about is our many roles as women. Very commonly, the women that come to me, they say that they feel overwhelmed because they're wearing so many hats. And it's very common, especially as a woman of the family. We're known to be the foundation. We're the person that everybody comes to if they're dealing with issues. But who do we go to? And very often that kind of gets the short end of the stick where we're not able to get the support that we're giving to so many others. So one thing in my treatment that I focus on is us being able to fill our cups. You know, you ever hear the term, you cannot fill from an empty cup? So you can't serve others. You can't be a mother or be a wife or be a girlfriend you can't be the best person that you are without filling your cup and without refueling. That's actually one of my favorite analogies is refueling, because it's like we're a gas tank, and once we are burnt out and we're running on E, eventually we're going to stop. So I'm very, very focused on us taking time to take care of ourselves, but also recognizing when we're in stressful situations. And so I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited about this. And we're going to have some fun. We're going to have a lot of fun. So the first thing, I love rules. I love points. I think rules are a great way for us to be able to understand everything. I shouldn't say rules. I like points. And so we can kind of get specific in terms of things that we should remember from this. My first thing is throw away comparisons. We live in a world where we tend to compare everything. We compare our children's achievements, we compare our jobs, we compare stages of life. I always say to my patients, your best is the best. You cannot compare yourself to anybody else, especially in the age of social media now, where people tend to be a little bit more, how should I say it, open in terms of bragging about what's going on in their lives and really just highlighting the positives. I always remind people that social media is a snapshot. It is a snapshot of somebody's life. It is not, very often they don't post the bad things. I know for me, I know on my social media, you're only gonna get my good days. So you have to remember that when you are looking at somebody else's life, that you're not seeing the full picture and you are just seeing a snapshot. So for that very reason, I always remind people that it's never healthy to compare. And so my first rule out of everything in terms of us staying mentally healthy is to throw out all comparisons, because you don't know what kind of life somebody's living. And if that's not a reality, there's no use in comparing it. So that is my very, very first rule. My second thing that I always like to make light of is recognizing when we're in transitions in life. And not only recognizing that we're in a transition, but recognizing that transitions are stressors. Some of the the strongest stressors that we can deal with life is loss and moving. And when I say loss, it doesn't necessarily mean death of a loved one. It could also mean a breakup. It can mean divorce. But those are all still stages of grief where we are transitioning to not having this in our lives anymore. And the same thing happens with moving. I work with a lot of women who are kind of transitioning into different stages of life where, they had kids at home and now the kids are going off to college and they're transitioning to being at home alone, or the whole empty nest syndrome. And you'll see that people take transitions differently. Some people celebrate them. Some people kind of fear them and try to distract themselves to not recognize what they're going through. But I always make a point to say that transitions are not meant to be done alone. And I always remind my patients, and I remind women every time when I speak to them, that transitions are stressors. So if you are going through any type of transition, if it's a change in job, if it's a change in relationship, if you're moving to a new home, if you're moving to a new church, if you are moving to a new Bible study group, it does not matter what the transition is. But if something that was a constant in your life is now changed and it's shifted, our minds respond to it as a stressor. So I have a lot of women who tend to feel guilt. So say they're going through a major transition in life, like they move to a new home or they move to a new city, and they're saying, I don't understand why I'm so stressed because this is good. This is a positive thing that's happening in my life. And I said, it can be something good, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be stress-free. So I always remind people that to kind of really just take care of yourself and recognize when you're in some kind of situation that's causing a shift, because what you may notice is with the transition, you start to get some symptoms, and these can include, you might be more irritable, or you might see that your sleep is off, or you might notice that your appetite has changed, or you are isolating more, you don't want to go out. This could be just a result of the stress. And so the first thing is identifying what's going on in your life that could be contributing to it, especially with burnout or just feeling overwhelmed. They often don't come by themselves. They often don't come without something triggering it. So when we first start our therapy and I first start working with women, we identify exactly what is going on, what has happened within the past year, and we go from there. In addition to moves, another really important one, and I cannot stress this enough, is dealing with changes in relationships. And with divorce is one of the most major stressors. And very commonly, even if it was something that was your decision and you're happy with it, that does not change the fact that you are grieving a constant that was in your life. So that, once again, it's that same kind of theory that if something was there in your life and now it is shifted or it's gone, we respond to it. And this goes for breakups. I have people who always say, I guess I feel so silly. I was only in a relationship with this person for a year. I can't believe I'm still thinking about this. I should snap out of this. I said, listen, that's the worst thing you can tell to somebody if they're going through a breakup or a divorce, is snap out of it. That's not how it works. And it's also not very sensitive, because we want to support those people around us. So I always remind, I just love to say this. I can't say this enough, is that when we are going through changes in relationships, whether it is with a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend, or even a friendship, you have to realize that these are stressors. And the reason why I keep saying that is because I want you to normalize what you're feeling. I want you to say, okay, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. I'm feeling a little bit anxious. this is okay. I know for me personally, when I dealt with, losing a very close friendship that I had when I was young, I grieved. I grieved it. I grieved it for a good amount of time. And at first I didn't understand it because I said, well, I'm not in a romantic relationship with this person. This is just one of my close friends. But I realized it's because that person was a constant in my life. And then now that they're no longer part of it, the mind misses it. And it's part of like how we think, is that we start to grieve what we don't have anymore. So always, 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 we have to recognize all transitions as stressors. And it goes for all ages. The thing with women, and what's so amazing about us, is that we transition into different phases of life and everything is brand new. So like from college, we go to college, or we go to starting a new job, or we move out of home. And then we go to the transition of maybe having children. And then you go to the transition of no longer having children in the house. And then a lot of times people transition to becoming caretakers for their parents. So there's so many different hats that we can wear throughout life. And I just want everybody to recognize that it doesn't mean that we necessarily, it's not realistic to think that we'll go through all these transitions smoothly. It's just not realistic. So my job is to point out that it's okay. And we can get through this, and it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to recognize that you are stressed out. And just accept that. I think a very, very common thing that we as women do, because we're known for being the foundation of the family, is that we tend to just say, oh no, I'm fine. I can get through this. And we tend to minimize our feelings, and that is doing us no good. It is doing us no good to be doing that. We have to pay attention to how we are feeling, and we have to pay attention to just signs that we are getting overwhelmed or feeling like the load is getting too heavy. Just because we serve all these roles, first of all, it doesn't mean that we have to serve all of them like superwomen. We're not. And if you try to kind of reach these perfectionist standards, after a while, it's kind of like you're a hamster on a wheel. You're never getting to it, and you always feel like you're coming up short. And that can take a toll on you as well. So I always say that you have to remember that whatever is your best is the best. There's no standards. There's no grading system. I don't care what your friend down the street is doing. I don't care what your sister is doing. Whatever is your best is your best. And I feel so very strongly for this, because women, we get very much into comparisons. And I shouldn't even say just women. I mean, as human beings, we tend to compare our achievements. We compare how we look. We compare our family's achievements. We compare where we live. But it does not serve us any good, unless the comparison's using for inspiration and it motivates you. But if it's just a comparison that's making you feel bad about yourself and making you feel like you're not doing enough, that is serving no purpose for you. And one of the main things with being able to preserve our mental health is getting rid of things that serve no purpose for us or cause us more stress. And I can speak about this personally, that there have been times that even I have made comparisons, and I'm looking at what another family is doing, or looking at where they're traveling, and I feel that sense of almost like in comparison, I feel like I'm not doing enough. Or I'm like, well, why can't I get that? Why can't I work hard? And you see how that is not serving me? Rather than feeling inspired by it, it's making me feel lesser. So that's something that I not only learned with my patients, but I learned it on my own. That when we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, or, to these goals that aren't exactly attainable in real life, we tend to get into this spiral where we start feeling sorry for ourselves, or we can start thinking that we're just not up to par. And that can contribute to feelings of anxiety and even sadness down the road. So comparisons are no good. That's it. That is, I can't stress that enough. But one of the first things in us preserving our mental health is throwing out comparisons. The next one, and this has to do with my very favorite word in the English language. Oh, one of my favorite words, I should say. The power of saying no. You remember I was talking about the fact that as the women in the family, a lot of people come to us. We are the caretakers. We are the breadwinners. We are the whatever role. More than likely, you're serving multiple roles. But what I always remind people of is that for us to do our best and to shine the most that we can shine, we have to set healthy boundaries. We have to. We have to. When I talk to women about what do they find is the most stressful for them, or where do they feel they're most overwhelmed, it's usually with the people that's closest to them, where they feel like they're doing something that they're obligated to do, or they feel like because it's a family member or because it's a friend, that they should do it. And what happens is they grow resentful because it's not something that they necessarily want to do. And it's no good. It's no good. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but have you ever been asked to do something or go somewhere and you reluctantly say yes? And as soon as you say yes, you start dreading the event. You're like, oh, I have to go. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But then you start justifying it in your head. You're saying, well, this person's a good friend. They came to my shower. They came to my house. So I should do this. And you put everything kind of to the side. You realize you're working a long day or you have other family obligations, but you make time for this. And like I said, you start dreading it from the minute you say yes. Guess what's going to happen when you actually go to that event? You're going to hate it. You are going to hate it. And that's how the mind works. If there's something that we really don't want to do and don't have to do, do not do it. If we can say no, I want you to. You'll be surprised how many women do not say no. And it's because thinking that in order, once again, to meet these standards, to be the best friend or the best spouse, we have to be able to do everything and say yes to everything and grant every request. That is not realistic. That's not. That's not realistic. And there's no way that we won't start running on fumes if we continue to do that. So, no. Like they said, it's the shortest word in the English language, but it's also the hardest one to say for most people. And I'm going to tell you about how to say no. So, for example, like if somebody asks me to do something, it's for a great cause, but I'm just feeling overwhelmed right now. It's not because I don't want to do it because of the cause. It's not because of the person. It's just I don't have the room for it in my schedule, but also I don't have the room for it mentally. You have to recognize your mental capacity. Even if you have the time, but you just don't want to go, or you feel like it's just going to be too much for you, please say no. People rarely regret saying no, but they always regret saying a reluctant yes. Always. Always. And, you start kind of grumbling right before, and you're just like, oh, I wish I never said yeah. I wish I never agreed to this. I wish I never accepted this invite. By just saying no, we really do save ourselves a lot of grief. We do. I always just, I love the word no. I can't even think of a better way to explain it. So a lot of, when women come to me and they say, so how do I say no? I don't want to come off rude. So let's say, even if it's a coworker asking for a favor, or a friend or a family member, and especially family members, people find it especially difficult to say no to family members. So they say, how do I say no without hurting their feelings? And I say to them, it doesn't mean that you have to be rude. You don't have to just say flat out no, but you can say simply, I'm not going to be able to do that, or I'm going to have to politely decline. You don't have to justify the reason why you are saying no. If you are just straightforward, you don't leave any open-ended kind of statements where they can follow up and ask you more, that tends to be the most effective. So, for example, this is an example of an open-ended statement that can kind of spiral into you eventually agreeing to do something that you don't want to do. So you say, oh, I have to work that day. I'm not going to be able to make it. And they'll say, oh, well, you can just come after work. Okay, so you just use work as an excuse. So what are you going to do now? So you see how that is where you kind of left that open-ended so they can say, oh, well, you can just come after work and we'll still be there. So if you just were to say, no, thank you, I'm going to have to politely decline, that would have been the end of the conversation. But when we start kind of just making excuses, and we have all done it, we have all done it. And it's not, it's not something necessarily bad. Sometimes it's good intentions. It's because we don't want to do something and we don't want to hurt the person's feelings. And I understand that. I definitely do. But when you start leaving things open-ended, and especially if we start making excuses and telling things that aren't necessarily true of what we have to do instead, first of all, the person's going to be even more hurt, or going to be hurt when they find out that, that it wasn't true. So that's already gets messy by itself. But also, people like to kind of use that as an in. So they'll say, like whatever excuse you give, they'll try to counter it. And then now you have a conversation and you're defending why you don't want to do something. And very commonly when people get into that spiral, they're defending why they don't want to do something, they end up agreeing. Eventually they lose the fight. And then just think about that time that you are now, first of all, presenting with having to go do this, but also with resenting it. When you don't want to do something, you think about it every day. You think somehow it comes into your mind every day, and that regret comes up somehow. Like, oh, I wish I never did that. I wish I never said yes to this. So I really always, if anything, I always remind my patients about the power of no. One of my favorite things to do, and I recommend it for you guys too, like anything that you have to do that you're obligated to do, I like you to put it on a list. And go through the list and write kind of just your obligations, whether it's volunteer work, anything extracurricular. I want you to go through it. And this is if you're feeling overwhelmed with your schedule right now. And I want you to, and this is what I normally do in my sessions. I have the women show me the list and I say, what can we cross off? Because clearly you are feeling overwhelmed and you are feeling stressed out. And when we feel stressed out, it's because our load is too heavy. So we got to take something out of here. What can we cross off? And it's very, very interesting. The things that people tend to cross off the list were never things that they wanted to do in the first place. It was things that they felt that they were obligated to do or be part of this committee because they were pressured into it. But the things that get crossed off the list first are things that they never initially even wanted to do. So I always kind of go through that list, and it's so liberating. I can see the sigh of relief after we start taking things off the list. So I want you to pay attention to your gut. That little voice inside of us that tells us if we should be doing something, if something's the right decision, pay attention. It does help to guide us, and it helps to put us on the course of doing things that we want to do. One of the worst or the most anxiety-provoking things you can do is agree to do something out of obligation, where you feel obligated or you feel like you owe it to somebody. That is just adding unnecessary stress. So I always I love this word so much. I could talk about this forever, but I always say, saying no is not about the other person. It's actually about you. It's about you setting healthy boundaries and you not getting burnt out. Because remember, you cannot pour into somebody else's cup from an empty cup. So you cannot fulfill your obligations and your other roles if you are not taking care of yourself. So I love no. I have a good friend who always says, you should know when it's time to leave the party. Like, when you're at a certain event and you're just like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to go home. And you should just go ahead and leave the party. Because if you stay there longer and longer and longer because you don't want to, you'll notice that you start getting more and more irritable, more and more tired. So with just like the same time, we always have to know when it's time to leave the party. We also need to know when it's time to say no. And I want you to start practicing it. Like I said, you can say, I politely decline. You can say, I'm not going to be able to do that. But remember, it has to be firm. It has to be a closed-ended statement. Like, no, I'm not going to be able to do that. A lot of people will go all the way around it and avoid saying no. Just say it. just say it in the nicest way that you can, because like I said, that's your way of treating yourself and setting healthy boundaries. The most successful relationships and the most successful people, when I say successful, I mean in terms of their mental health and where they feel strong, is when they set healthy boundaries. And it doesn't have to necessarily be just within the relationships. Like I said, a lot of people especially have difficulty saying no to family members. Family members can stress us out just like anybody else. So if you feel like a family member is asking too much of you, or you feel like it's just something that you can't do right now, I want you to start practicing saying no and just politely declining. Because the thing is, once you start doing that, you set healthy boundaries. After a while, people start to respect those boundaries. So it's always just really, really important to set kind of the parameters around you, because remember, right now we're focusing on you feeling better and you not getting burnt out and protecting your emotions. So, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a psychiatrist. I'm saying this also from experience. Saying no and setting healthy boundaries is really important. We can serve others, but we can serve them with parameters. Because if we don't have parameters, people can take advantage and we are going to be burnt out. Our tank is going to be on E, and something else is going to suffer as a result. So I say no. You don't have to apologize, because I usually will catch my patients when they're declining an invite, they'll say, I'm sorry, but I won't be able to. Why are you sorry? You're not sorry, right? You're not sorry. We want you to think that you're just not able to do it. I don't want you to apologize when you're saying no, because sometimes it's a reflex for us to say, oh, I'm sorry, I won't be able to do that. Or I'm sorry, I won't be able to make it. Because when you're already apologizing in the beginning of that, you're making it seem like you're doing something wrong. So I want to take the apology out of it and just say, I won't be able to do it. Another method that I see some people do is avoid it. So if you know somebody's going to ask you to do something, you avoid them. That actually rarely is successful, because they rarely forget what they were going to ask of you. But also, it's adding another stressor to you, because now you're still thinking about it and you're making this effort to avoid the person. Whereas if you were just able to say no to it in the beginning, that would have been off your plate. And my job is to make sure that there's not too much on your plate. If there's anything that we are learning from today, is that we cannot continue to be the wonderful women that we are if we're not protecting our emotions and protecting our mind and that means protecting our energy and protecting our space. Yes, you don't have to apologize for setting healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are good. They're good for you. And last but not least is we have to celebrate our little wins. So in addition to avoiding comparisons, setting healthy boundaries with the power of no, and recognizing when we're in stressful transitions, we have to now take care of ourselves and celebrate. I like to say celebrate little wins, because often we think that treating ourselves or taking care of ourselves are just reserved for special occasions. And no, that is not true. It's not just on your birthday or Valentine's Day or Mother's Day. We get kind of into that idea that self-care is more of a luxury than it's a necessity. And I can tell you very much so that it is a necessity. And whatever is your self-care is what matters. A lot of people say to me, when you hear self-care, you think of spas, or you think of yoga, or you think of meditation. I don't care what your form of self-care is, as long as it's something that you enjoy and brings you peace. If just sitting in prayer brings you peace and brings you joy, do that. If sitting and staring at a wall for 30 minutes brings you joy, do that. I'm all about whatever brings you peace, as long as it's legal and it's safe. I always like to just encourage people to celebrate the little wins. You had a rough week at work and you made it through the assignments that you were supposed to do, or in school, celebrate Friday. Take yourself out for lunch or watch your favorite movie. We have to start celebrating our own wins, because once again, with these wonderful roles that we fill, we're used to celebrating others. And sometimes we forget that we also need to be celebrating our journey. So reward is very, very important. It's part of how we function. It helps to motivate us. And it also helps us to become more productive, because when we are more inspired and we're looking forward to a reward and we're looking forward to the end result, we tend to work harder. It's just kind of like it's a law of humans that when there's a reward at the end of the tunnel, we do better. We literally just do better. So I always say that you need to celebrate. You need to celebrate little wins. And once again, no comparisons. Your self-care might not look like your friend's self-care, might not look like your mom's self-care. Self-care is something that is very, very personal. So it's something that you enjoy doing, no judgment in terms of what you find relaxing. If I have a patient who just likes to play the tuba, that's it. Brings her joy, helps to relax her. She needs to do it once a week. Now, for the schedule, speaking of that, for the schedule, I do like self-care to be once a week. Ideally. If we can do more, that's even better. I have certain people who use a certain amount of time, a certain time block during the day, whether it's lunchtime or something that they just focus on doing something they enjoy, whether it's a crossword puzzle or designing something online. I just have to know that there's a carved out time in your schedule. And I'm one of those people who ask these women to just pull out your schedule. Let me see. I see everything else. I see everybody's games. I see all these meetings. I see, all this volunteer work. Where are you in this? And that's what I'll say. I'll say, where are you in this? What are you doing for yourself? So, celebrating us and what we are accomplished is important. We do not have to wait to be celebrated by others. We celebrate ourselves. And that's, like I said, it continues to help us stay motivated, but also it's good for the soul. Simply. It's simply just good for the soul. So to kind of wrap up everything that we discussed today, and this is all for us living a mentally healthier life. The first thing is recognizing when you're in a stressor. Transitions, work, changes in location, changes in relationships, these are all stressors. These are not things that you should just have to tough it out and not have any reaction to. So recognizing when you're in a stressor is number one. Number two is avoiding comparisons. Like I said, and I give social media as an example, but there's other examples of where we may compare ourselves to others at family gatherings or in church, and we're just kind of comparing. It never ends well. It never ends well. And you always have to remember that what people present is not necessarily the reality. So you could be comparing yourself to something that's not even real. So avoiding comparisons is very huge, because what I see is that when people focus on comparisons, it ends up contributing to feelings of worthlessness or feelings of just hopelessness or just feelings of inadequacy, where you felt pretty good about yourself, but then when you compared yourself to this other person, all of a sudden you're seeing yourself in a different light. So that comparison served no purpose for you. And okay, so that's my two. Transitions are stressors. Don't compare. Number three, my favorite, the power of saying no, setting healthy boundaries. In order for us to thrive, we have to set the parameters around us. Like I said, we can serve with guidelines. And that's how we are the best person that we can be. You know, that whole term like happy wife, happy life. Same thing. Happy woman, then people around you are going to be happier. So if you are happier and you're saying no and you're setting healthy boundaries, then you can excel in other things of life because you are not burnt out. And you will see it's such a big difference in terms of doing things that you want to do rather than things that you're obligated to do. You'll see that a joy starts to come to your life when you start rearranging your schedule to doing things that you want to do. And it's almost instant. I have women will say to me, taking that off my list, wow, I didn't realize it was causing me so much stress. And they'll say, I just did not realize that it was such a heavy weight on me. So yeah. I was saying, no, I laugh because people around me will know that it's something that I believe strongly in. And I think as women, we're often used to just always saying yes to everything. And it serves no good for us. And last but not least, we will celebrate our wins. We don't have to wait for somebody else to give us applause. We can clap ourselves. And I want you to set time for yourself to do things, not only to celebrate your accomplishments. Like, let's say you made it through a rough week at work, or let's say you made it through a rough week of parenting and having to kind of help your child get through a certain project or get through a certain stressor. It's okay. As a matter of fact, it's okay. I recommend you celebrate your accomplishments, whatever they are. Small, big, celebrate them. Because, or even, let's say, exercise. We always, exercise goals are one of the most common ones we tend to make. You're able to walk 3 times this week. Okay, let's celebrate. Let's do something. It helps us mentally, but it also helps to motivate us and give us feelings of fulfillment. So I really like to stress that rewarding ourselves is not selfish. The term that self-care is not selfish, because it's true. Self-care is not something that is a luxury. It is something that's a necessity. And in order for us to be the best, serve the best in the roles that we do, whether, mother, spouse, friend, sister, we need to make sure that we're taking care of us. And that's really the key. That is the key for us thriving mentally, is that we have to make sure that we are setting healthy boundaries, not comparing ourselves, recognizing when we're in a stressor, and rewarding us when we come out of the stressor. Rewarding ourselves, or just rewarding ourselves once a week. Just setting self-care and making that a priority in our life. I guarantee if you start making self-care a part of your schedule, just like you schedule everything else, you'll start to notice a difference in your mood. You'll start to notice a difference in your sleep patterns. You'll start to notice that you are just feeling a little bit more light. I love the fact that strong women, we serve all of these different areas of our life, but we have to take time out for ourselves. In order for us to be the best that we want to be in whichever role that we fill, we have to take care of ourselves. And that is the most important thing that I want to remember. And like all these things that we discuss, the boundaries, recognizing stressors, avoiding comparison, those all lead to the same goal, that we are doing things to protect our emotions, but also we're filling our cups back up. We are making sure to refuel and reward ourselves and carve out time for self-care and celebrate our accomplishments, not waiting for other people to always celebrate us. This is important for us to continue to be the strong, amazing women that we are. We have to also take care of ourselves. And thank you. Thank you for joining me. I am located in Atlanta, Georgia. If you have any questions or about seeing me or what I do, DionMetzgerMD.com is where you can find my information. And I thank you.
This is Stephanie Ritchie from Nashville, Tennessee, and I am sharing some transparencies about myself, hopefully to encourage anyone who is seeing and listening this video. I was a young girl who suffered from depression, and with that depression brought on anxieties, a poor self-image, and it also led to behaviors that were not conducive with what I knew to be right. And even when I felt like those predispositions had been resolved, they tended to rear their heads during periods of chaos, and it would always start off with arguments or disagreements, and it would lead to choosing the wrong relationships to be in, partnerships. So I'm not just talking about relationships, like personal relationships either, business relationships and so forth. And a lot of times those needs to feel accepted and feel wanted can cause us to make decisions that aren't the best for us. So you have to build this wherewithal to know that, as long as you focus on what's right, you'll do what's right. But now that we're in this period of separation and not being able to engage physically with people that we love, we can be tempted. And it's not necessarily to say that we would succumb to the temptation, but the temptation will present itself, especially when you have those sins that does so easily beset you, something that's easy to fall back on. So my encouragement to you is to let you know you are not alone. Your sisters in Christ are praying for you and encouraging you and hoping that during this period of waiting and transitioning into a different norm, that you understand God is with you. We are with you, and we stand in prayer for you.
Today I am discussing motherhood, specifically as it relates to single parenting and co-parenting. My name is Autumn Collier, and I am a licensed psychotherapist with a private practice in Atlanta, Georgia. Let's dive in. So before we dive further into single motherhood or co-parenting, let's first acknowledge how difficult being a parent is. No matter the age of your children, each age presents its own set of challenges. Whether it is the literal challenge of trying to leave the house with children, loading up the car, packing bags, and trying to get somewhere on time without someone yelling, "I have to potty," or whatever the case is, or whether it's having to care for a sick child and still meet a deadline at work, or feeling sad because your child feels sad, or whether it's sitting home anxious because you have a new driver that is out on the road, or worried about your young adult children in college that are away from home. There's a lot of stress and anxiety that naturally comes with being a parent. And doing it alone can create an even greater amount of stress. What I want to do is identify some of the challenges that are present with single motherhood. The first one is feeling alone or isolated. You're with your kids all the time. You may rarely be with other adults. This creates the physical isolation of just being with your children, as well as feeling emotionally isolated or by yourself, or feeling that maybe no one can understand what it is you're going through. This also allows a lot of wondering, a lot of rumination in your mind for, what should have been or what could have been or what isn't. So that's one challenge. The first challenge we'll be discussing more in depth a little later. So the next one is the obvious financial stress. Some women might be going from a 2-income household to now a 1-income household, or from being a stay-at-home mom to now having to work outside of the home to support the household. Or you may have always been the only provider for your household. This level of stress can be chronic and really weigh on us physically and emotionally. The next challenge is feelings of guilt. As a single mother, you might feel ashamed or embarrassed by your situation, or you might feel guilt for ending a relationship, which now the result is the children being in a one-parent household. There might be feelings of shame related to feeling inadequate because you cannot do everything you desire for your children. Meeting a work deadline, especially now during the COVID pandemic, might mean your children have more screen time or tablet time than desired, and you might feel guilty about this. We're going to talk more about ways to ease some of the guilt and even some of the negative self-talk that may enter as a result of the guilt. We start to maybe tell ourselves and feed ourselves the negative self-talk that isn't helpful, such as, well, if only I had done this, I wouldn't be in this situation, or if only this, or if only he would do this, then maybe I wouldn't be in this situation. We'll talk more about that. Another challenge is being stretched thin. As a single mother, or any mother, to be honest, is stretched thin. And as a single parent, you are significantly stretched thin. And this will take a toll on us mentally and physically. Everyone wants a piece of you, and there's only so much that can go around. So there has to be that balance. And then the last challenge that we will discuss today is parenting during the pandemic and that extra added isolation that the pandemic has caused. If single parenting wasn't hard enough, try throwing a pandemic on top of it. We all love our children dearly. However, many of us are feeling right now there is no escaping them. They're always here. So we'll talk more about that as well. Now that we've identified some of the challenges single motherhood may bring about, let's now talk about some of the ways to buffer and decrease the effect of these challenges. So the first challenge we identified was feeling alone or isolated. So with this, something that we definitely want to do is seek support. And I recommend that we first want to seek our natural supports, those things that are naturally in place. So a natural support is a resource that you have easy access to that does not require much investment from you. So an example might be having a grandparent keep the children for a day, or chatting with one of your best girlfriends so that you can vent and it makes you feel better. Or it might be attending a support group at your church, which also has childcare for the kids while you're in the group. So these are things in your environment that you have easy access to already, kind of the low-hanging fruit that you can use as supports. Something else you can do is to join a local or virtual single moms group for support. There's tons of groups out there. There's a group for anything. They can either be online, even through some of the social media groups, or you can actually go to one. But I do recommend joining a group for support, and there you will find other individuals like you who are doing things and can also share their experience, and maybe even you guys can swap tips on what works best. Another thing or tool that might be helpful is to be strategic and plan some adult time. Again, you're with your kids all the time. Well, every adult needs adult time. So plan it, be strategic. It might be having a girls outing once a month with your girlfriends, where you guys go check out a new restaurant or whatever the case may be, whatever it is you enjoy doing. But make sure you schedule in some adult time with some of your girlfriends. So the things just mentioned are actionable, tangible steps that can be taken to help reduce the impact of these challenges. There are also some intangible tasks or steps that can be taken to assist as well. And most of those really deal with changing the way we think and challenging our perspective. So let's talk about some of those. So the first intangible would be, do not compare your situation to others. This is not helpful, and your comparison is also being based off fantasy. So I say it's being based off fantasy because we do not know what is really going on in someone's home. We can only imagine and fantasize about what's going on in someone's home. So, if you're sitting there wishing you had it easy, like the two-parent household neighbors with perfectly behaved children, that is your fantasy of them. We don't know the true story behind what is going on. They too have struggles. And in all honesty, you may not be equipped to deal with the struggles they have, just like they may not be equipped to deal with the struggles you have. We are all equipped to deal with our own set of struggles. So be mindful of that. Do not compare yourself, because you are ultimately comparing yourself to a fantasy. And as most things, the fantasy is better than the reality. Another part of this is being mindful of the dialogue that we're creating for ourselves or telling ourselves. So being a single parent, you might be telling yourself, oh, I bet my single friends are doing XYZ, or I bet my friends who are married or have husbands in the home can do whatever they please because the husband can take care of the kids, whatever the case may be. This is creating a dialogue for yourself that can further isolate you emotionally, because you are creating what you believe is a distinction between you and others. And the tone of the dialogue you're saying to yourself reflects you seeing the others as being in a better position than yourself. So that therefore can make you feel as if they're doing life right and you are not because of your situation. And this will obviously weigh on your mood and even possibly make you feel inferior to others, or just create a dysphoric state for you. So in my practice, one of the main treatment modalities I use is cognitive behavioral therapy. So CBT for short. And the premise behind CBT is, think of a triangle. So one end of the triangle, you have your cognitions or your thoughts. On another side of the triangle, you have emotions or feelings. And then on the other side, you have behavior or how you respond. So the idea is that our thoughts, or what we tell ourselves, dictates how we feel, which then determines how we behave. So we really want to be mindful of our thoughts. So a real life situation using this triangle could be, if you're thinking and telling yourself, you know what, this sucks, single parenthood sucks, everyone else is able to do, hang out and have fun, or no one's struggling like I am, this is really difficult for me. If that is what you're telling yourself, that will then make you feel possibly inferior, create some low mood, a little dysphoria, which then, in terms of your reaction or behavior, could possibly make you want to isolate more. So when people say, hey, you want to go hang out? Not really, or hey, just reaching out, hey, let's do this or that. Nah, what's the point? It can then determine how you feel. So what we really try to do is change the thought, which then has the trickle effect. So to sum it up, as it relates to cognitive behavioral therapy, the belief is it's not necessarily the event or the life event that makes us feel some kind of way. It's what we tell ourselves about that event that makes us feel some kind of way. So be careful what it is you tell yourself. Begin to change that dialogue that you're having with yourself. The next challenge we'll talk about is the financial stress. So raising kids is expensive. It's expensive all the way around, and there's no shortcut resolution to relieving the financial strain of raising children. So I'll be brief on this point, because I do believe that there are financial professionals who would best serve this point. I will say I do recommend you seek professional guidance with finances from a financial pro that can help you with this. Long gone are the days where you needed to be wealthy to have a financial advisor or planner or whatever the case is. They are very accessible now. So really seek professional guidance. There are books, there are podcasts, YouTube videos, social media groups, tons of resources out there that can teach you how to successfully manage finances. So take advantage of these resources. It is definitely helpful, or would definitely be helpful if finances could be a stressor that's removed from single parenting. It won't be the cure, end all be all. However, if you can decrease stress in one area, then that will be really nice. The next challenge we discussed was feelings of guilt. So let's dive a little bit more into this. So there's that mommy guilt. that most mothers have at some point, whether it's, I have mommy guilt because I wasn't able to attend this, or, my kids were talking and I just zoned out, or, my kids have had fast food 2 days this week and I haven't cooked the way I want to cook. Mothers, we can find just about anything to hold guilt about. So one thing I will say is that in order to manage our guilt, we definitely want to manage our expectations about ourselves as mothers. We also want to make sure that we show ourselves grace always. We're not going to be perfect, and we have to remind ourselves of that. Show ourselves some grace. If we have that big deadline at work coming up, and we may have to work over the weekend, then you may just need to be prepared to tell the kids, you know what, buddy? Go ahead and get your tablet. You're in luck. I'm sure the kids will really enjoy that. And yes, I'm aware that kids should have a limit on screen time. And I'm also aware that every now and then, a little extra screen time won't hurt. Would you rather have your child with a bit too much screen time exposure for one day? Or would you rather, as a mom, walk around moody and irritated and resentful that you weren't able to complete an assignment or a task that was really important for your livelihood? So I think sometimes we just have to weigh and make a decision off of that and show ourselves some grace. Another idea around creating a buffer or decreasing some of that guilt is setting boundaries. So while there are not enough hours in the day, there aren't, we can make the most of each moment. And we can try to do that by being present with our children when we are in the presence of our children. This will allow us to fully engage with them during our interactions. And then when we need our time or time to ourselves, we won't feel as guilty about taking it. Now, the whole idea of becoming present and being mindful is very difficult, especially when we have so much going on in our head. I'm trying to keep up with everything. I have this to do next, or this and that I do this, checklist. We have all those things going on. So it is difficult to be present in the here and now. Part of that, I want to talk a little bit about becoming present and what that could look like. Because to be present is to be here and now. And one way to look at it is our minds time travel, but our bodies are always present. Our bodies are always in the here and now. As your heart beats, it is only beating for this second, which has now passed, and it is on to the current second. So our bodies are always present. Our mind time travels, and it time travels back to the past or forward to the future. There's a quote I like that sums up the idea of being present, and it is by Lao Tzu. Pardon me if I mispronounce the name, and I'll paraphrase it. It states that to be focused on the past can be depressing. To be worried about the future can evoke anxiety. To be present now is to be at peace. I really like that, and that sums up the whole idea of being present. Focusing on the past, the would've, should'ves, could'ves can be quite depressing. So we don't really want to live there. And then worrying about the future. Anxiety is riddled, or one of the hallmarks of anxiety is the two words, what if? What if, what if, what if, what if? What if I don't get in? What if I don't finish? What if my kid? What if my kid does this with my kid? It is just this constant narrative of what ifs that really gets that anxiety going. And that's not helpful, that future thinking. But to be present right now, focused on what is happening right now, can feel pretty peaceful. So I want to share a skill that we can do to help ourselves become more present in the moment when we are feeling that we are mind traveling. And this is something you will do. This skill involves activating your senses. Again, because that involves the body, and the body is always present. So this skill, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, with your senses, I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll model it for you. This is something you can use to become more present in the moment. Again, we are using our 5 senses, which involves the body, and we're identifying things as you need your mind to do that. So we're allowing our mind to come back to our body. So what we'll do is identify what I ask my clients to do when I do this with clients is say, identify 5 things you see, identify 4 things you hear, 3 things you are touching or are touching you, 2 things you smell, and 1 thing you taste. So a quick example of that would be, if I were to identify 5 things I see, I would say headphones, pen, scissors, computer, bookshelf. Identify 4 things I hear. I hear myself. I hear children playing outside. I hear a lawnmower outside. And I hear the buzzing of the light. 3 things touch or am touching me. I feel the cloth of my clothes. I feel the chair, the seat of the chair, and how that feels under me. And I also feel my watch sliding on my wrist. 2 things, that was 3, so then 2 things I smell. I smell office furniture, and I also smell fragrance in the home. And then 1 thing I taste would be the residual taste of an Oreo that I had before starting. So doing that activity allows me to become present because I really have to focus on what is happening right here, right now. So that is super helpful to do, and something that you can do any given time, and really no one even has to know you're doing that simple skill. But it allows us to become present, allow your mind to come back to your body. Another thing as it relates to the feelings of guilt, and to be honest, whatever it is we're dealing with in life, I really encourage individuals to express gratitude. So there may be resentment we're holding on to, or the would-haves, could-haves, or just the anger for what all we have to do now, or what has become, how the blueprint maybe didn't work out. There's a lot that we could hold on to. However, I encourage everyone on a daily basis to express gratitude. Gratitude for what is, gratitude for maybe what is not, just gratitude on a daily basis. What that does is it puts our mind, our spirit, and our lens, how we see the world, it puts our lens in a spirit of gratitude and allows us to receive all that is good. So when we go about life with the lens of gratitude, we start to see life from a more optimistic way. Kind of the old adage, we see life now half full, the glass half full instead of half empty. Well, when we express gratitude, then we start to look for things that are really great that are happening, and we don't give as much attention to the things that aren't going well, because we could feed our attention, either way, with what is going well or what is not going well. It's just a matter of what we choose to do. So we want to live a life of gratitude, as that really does help improve our spirit and our mood. The next challenge we identified was being stretched thin. So one antidote for this is to set boundaries. So, as moms, we are pulled many different ways. Someone always wants us or needs us. We really have to learn how to set and create boundaries. So one of the biggest things we can do for ourselves is learn how to say no. And understand that no is a complete sentence. Nothing needs to be behind it. We don't need to do, sometimes as women we feel, I don't want to be harsh or cold or seen a certain kind of way if I just say no. So sometimes we resort to the hemming and hawing and singing, the no, but, or well, maybe. I don't know why we're playing choir with the word no. All we need is a simple no. And that is enough. So no is a complete sentence. There is not enough of you to go around for everyone and everything, but there is enough for you to go around for what is most important. So one way to also help you remember this is to understand or be mindful that whenever you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. So whatever it is you're saying yes to better be worth it. Even if you want to kick the stakes up a bit and say, me saying yes to this is me saying no to my kids. It may not have to be so black or white. Yeah, there are things that, of course the kids are more important. However, there are some things that we do want to do. But, whatever works for you, to remember to set those boundaries. Saying yes to something is saying no to something else. So it should really be worth it. Because as moms, we are stretched thin, especially single moms. We want to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves physically, so that we have the stamina to share ourselves with others. So a couple of checklist items here that I'll ask. Are you exercising? Exercise is extremely good for our mood as well as our physical health, of course. We want to aim for at least 30 minutes of exercise most days, if not every day. Move your body around. Studies have proven that exercise improves the mood. Endorphins, those are feel-good hormones. Those are released when we exercise. It is nice to be able to clear our head as well with some good old exercise, a nice walk outside. Are you eating balanced meals? And are you eating 3 meals a day? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, a couple of snacks. Are you keeping your energy levels up and fueling yourself so that you do have the sustenance to keep moving throughout the day? And you're not getting hangry or fatigued due to poor diet. During this time, I know we've all been quarantined and, advised to stay in or, really just do social distancing. But with that, are you still going outside and getting some sun every day? If not, I highly encourage you do. Get outside in the natural environment daily. It is wonderful for our mood. We need to see sunlight. Get outside and see the skyline every day. Nature has also been proven to improve. Being in nature, a study was done, has also shown to increase or improve our mood. So try doing that. Get outside and get some sun every day, not to mention that getting that vitamin D is extremely important as well. Are you going to the doctor and getting your checkups regularly as recommended? Those are things we should be doing, getting our annual checkups to make sure we are healthy and in tip-top shape to be able to care for these children. Are you practicing some form of daily mindfulness or meditation or prayer? This is something we also want to do every day, and this could also go along with expressing gratitude daily. You want to find a quiet space in your home and do this daily. Your space might be inside your closet. Cut the lights off, close the door, sit on the floor, and have your quiet time. Or it might be just in your bathroom, wherever it is. Have some quiet time daily to practice meditation or prayer or mindfulness. And of course, express gratitude daily. So the last challenge we identified was parenting during this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. We are all facing a new time with this pandemic and don't necessarily know what to expect. And I want to normalize that whatever it is that we were already experiencing or dealing with in our lives prior to the pandemic, it has been magnified now that the pandemic has hit. And that is okay, and that is totally normal. So please know that. Show yourself some grace. What we've discussed related to single parenting and creating buffers for the challenges, those things still hold true during this time, during this pandemic, and are probably needed more now than ever. In addition to those things, I also encourage you to use this time to recalibrate yourself and your family. Spend that quality time together. Acknowledge that we really don't need a lot or have to do something outside the home all the time to feel fulfilled or to have fun. Being around each other can be enough. This is a time to also create meaning or new meaning and create rituals for yourselves and your families and your children. This would be a nice time to do that. So just to get recalibrated, prior to the pandemic, we were all moving in a very fast pace, just going. And now we've been given the opportunity to slow down some and to also hone in on the necessities of life. So really use this time to recalibrate yourselves. So, as we come to an end here, I'll reiterate that motherhood is a tough job and one of the most challenging roles there is. You know, our kids are either pulling on our apron strings or our heartstrings. And I will also add that it is one of the most rewarding jobs, in my opinion. So, while many of us have risen to the challenge of single parenting, we also need support and cannot do it alone. Unfortunately, you don't have to, because there are supports out there. So if you or anyone you know is in need of professional support, such as counseling, there are resources available all over Atlanta, Metro, and the state of Georgia in general. If you are interested in counseling or would like to learn more, you can go to our practice website. Our practice is Collier Counseling, LLC. Our website is www.colliercounselingllc.com, and more information should be listed on the screen for you guys to take note of. Also, if you have any questions or comments about this presentation, I would love to hear them or answer any questions that I can. Feel free to email me directly. My email address is autumn, AUTUMN, at colliercounselingllc.com. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak and share with you. It has been my honor. Take care.
Are here, moving in our midst, yeah, we worship you, God, we worship you. You are here, and you're working in this place, you are, we worship you, God, we worship you. You are here, and you're moving in our midst, yeah. We worship you, God, we worship you. You are here, and you're working in this place. We worship you, we worship you. Yeah, 'cause you are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. That is who you are.
Hi, I'm Lena Franklin, a mindfulness-based psychotherapist and spiritual teacher. We are here to talk about transforming difficult emotions, which is a topic that every human truly needs because the nature of being human is that we do experience difficult emotions much of the time. So as you sit wherever it is you are, really tune into what difficult emotion maybe you are experiencing in this moment or have experienced recently. So just breathing into the belly, tune into that. Maybe it was disappointment or anger or sadness, grief, frustration, shame. So I know we are completely wired to push away difficult emotions, but just take a moment to tune in. What difficult emotion have you been experiencing either in this moment or recently? And tune into that. And as you do, I want to share that difficult emotions have a very intentional purpose in our consciousness, in our body, our mind, in our life. Difficult emotions can be one of the greatest ways we learn more about ourselves and more about how we show up in the world as a human and show up in our relationships. So when we have the courage, when we can embody the courage to lean in to the difficult emotions that we experience, we begin to understand ourselves at a deeper level. We begin to understand the belief systems that we carry. Maybe we begin to understand dynamics in relationships that we've chosen to be in that may or may not be serving us. Difficult emotions arise for one primary purpose: to teach us. So as we move into this workshop, I really want us to embrace a different perspective on difficult emotions. They're not bad. We don't want to push them away. We don't want to repress them. And we've been doing that probably for far too long anyhow. We want to shift our lens, shift our perspective into receiving difficult emotions as some of our greatest teachers. Can we do that? I know for me, I've gone through a few really big, challenging moments in my life, whether it was losing my mom when I was in grad school or going through divorce. But those difficult emotions, as I look back on those life transformative experiences, moving through those difficult emotions became some of my most transformative experiences and really built a kind of resilience and a strength, a personal strength that perhaps I wouldn't have received if I didn't lean in to those difficult emotions. And again, as humans, we are here to experience the lessons of life. Much of the time, we don't experience lessons unless we also host those challenging emotions that are highly uncomfortable for us. So as you're tuning in to your own difficult emotions, maybe in this moment or recently in your life, maybe you can say to yourself, this is a teacher that has showed up to guide me, to teach me, to transform me. Most of the spiritual teachings throughout time and around the world talk about how we awaken through the experience of pain and suffering. And when you think about nature even, right? Think about how forests are burned down in order for new growth to happen. When you think about the cultivation of a pearl, in that beautiful shell, there's a little irritation that comes in, and that irritation, that distress, creates a pearl, something that is so magnificent, so beautiful. When you think about the blossoming and the freeing of a butterfly from a cocoon, there's a sense of struggle. There's kind of this moment where there's the breaking of the cocoon and there's a struggle there. So coming back to us as humans, when we embrace difficult emotions as lessons for our own transformation, we are aligning ourselves with the natural rhythms of nature. And that's no small thing. That can be a life-altering choice. And first and foremost, it's a shift in our perception, because we are wired. We have been taught that challenging or difficult emotions are bad. How many times have we heard when we were younger, perhaps, oh, don't cry, or don't be angry? We are taught by society, we are taught by our seemingly, well-intentioned caregivers, these messages. But I really, truly want to offer you a different way of seeing your challenging emotions. And if you can continue to adopt this lens, this perspective, you will allow yourself to be an alchemist of difficult emotion into something that is magnificent. Your greatest growth, your awakening, your expansion. So I want to offer a mindset tool to really help you move through those difficult emotions in a way that allows you to see the depth of your power, the depth of your capacity to be that very alchemist. And this is a technique called the 3 A's. The 3 A's. The first is to acknowledge that difficult emotion, the challenging emotion that's coming up. Maybe you have a fight with your friend or your partner. What's coming up within you? That moment of awareness, what are you acknowledging that's coming up within you? Maybe it's anger, maybe it's rage, maybe it's shame. So feel that, notice that. The first A is to acknowledge. And you want to acknowledge it with your full attention. Again, not pushing it away, not demonizing that challenging emotion as bad, but receiving it as this teacher, acknowledging it as this teacher. First A, acknowledge. The second A is to accept. Accept that this challenging emotion, this uncomfortable emotion, is a part of your humanness. It is a part of your humanness. It can allow you to really blossom and move past some of your barriers. So what we want to accept that this challenging emotion is here to teach us. Acknowledge the emotion, accept that this emotion is a part of your humanness. And the third is really the biggest action step, and that's to take alternative action. We want to take alternative action. What does that mean? So instead of dwelling on the emotion, just say it's anger. Instead of dwelling in that anger and really spinning with stories as to how you can get this person back or what you need to say to them, you want to take an alternative action. Maybe it is 5 minutes of mindful belly breathing. Maybe it's taking a walk outside and being mindful as you are feeling your feet present on Mother Earth. Maybe it's writing down your inner experience. A lot of times when we journal, when we release those emotions onto paper, it can help us purge, it can help us release, helps us to process. Maybe we spend a few minutes really with our child or with our four-legged child, our pet. Those are ways we can automatically boost the mood. So that alternative action is really up to you, and it's up to the intuitive guidance that you receive from yourself, but also you want to pull on a toolbox that you've perhaps cultivated over time. So if you think about certain acts or practices that help to bring you more connectedness, more peace, you want to make one of those practices your alternative action. So for me, it is almost always grounding. Grounding is a way we connect with earth energy. Our feet firmly planted into the earth allows us to receive that powerful and balancing electromagnetic energy of Mother Earth. It decreases stress, anxiety, depression. It increases homeostasis in the body. So whenever I'm feeling stirred up, angry, anxious, off kilter, I ground. And that is my go-to alternative action. So the 3 A's, if you can get yourself into a rhythm where you are really flowing with the 3 A's throughout the day, acknowledge, accept, alternative action, then you can truly use those difficult emotions as some of your greatest teachers. And I can't stress that enough. The courage to lean in to those uncomfortable emotions. That is the transformative serum. That is the essence of what it means to be a resilient human. So emotional resilience is a key factor for overall life satisfaction. So a lot of the studies talk about the fact that more resilience in our emotional system gives us a greater chance for high life satisfaction. So contrary to perhaps the belief that stress is always bad for you, we want to embrace stress in the system, in the emotional system, in the nervous system, as that grit that makes the pearl. The pearl being a human living a life of meaning, living a life that is aligned, that is present, that is beyond the constrictions of uncomfortable emotions. So we use that stress of leaning in, because being with anger, being with frustration, being with shame, sadness, those are all very, very challenging moments, right? So I don't want to minimize the fact that, being human and feeling these emotions, I don't want to minimize it. I'm not trying to say it's not hard. It is. And I'll even venture to say that being present with challenging emotions becomes an aspirational practice. So a lot of the mindfulness teachers will talk about these practices as being aspirational. We're not going to be perfect at it 100% of the time, but we aspire to continue to lean in to the challenging, difficult emotions that arise for us. And of course, there are going to be times that maybe we choose to have that, extra glass of wine or that extra piece of pizza or whatever it is. That's just our humanness, and that's why we can't practice mindfulness without a deep sense of self-compassion. So we need to have compassion for our imperfections. But if we aspire to continue to practice the 3 A's, for example, that will change your life in ways that will unfold throughout every step, every chapter of your life. So I think about my own story, my own journey, and my first big personal awakening of spiritual growth and really alignment of my inner life with my outer life was when my mom suddenly passed when I was in grad school. My first year of grad school, she died of a sudden stroke. And I think about that as such a formative time. Now, at the time, I was definitely fused with my sadness. I was fused with my grief. But when I began to really embrace mindfulness, meditation, presence-based practices as a part of my healing, in addition to therapy, I began to see the transformative aspects of these practices. That I, as a human, so my soul or my core self, was so much more than my grief experience, for example. So I could be with the grief, but then expand past it. It's almost like, if you put a drop of food coloring in a very small dish of water, it's going to color that entire small dish of water. But if you put a drop of food coloring in the ocean, it gets diluted so much so you don't even see the color, right? So if that drop is your difficult emotion, your grief, your sadness, your anger, your shame, you want to create an expansive basin, an expansive holding place for that challenging emotion. So when I began to meditate and practice yoga and go to therapy and just be more self-reflective when I lost my mom, I began to expand that sacred container in which I was holding my grief in. So I wasn't hyper-focused on it as the only part of my human experience. It became one of many aspects of my human experience. And that was the initial, most powerful experience of my life, the depth of grief, the depth of suffering, of sadness. And so through that embodied experience, I began to guide clients and students through the journey of embracing difficult emotions as the great teachers that they are. And if you think about your own life, so I want to do a little contemplation for a second. Think about the moments in your own life where you feel like you grew and expanded, more than any other moment or any other time. Think about what happened. Think about what you were feeling. What were your transformative life moments? What did they entail? Probably, to some extent, they included difficult emotions, whatever those were for you. And so we can use that awareness as evidence that these emotions are something to be worked with. Okay. And there's a balance between working with a challenging, uncomfortable emotion and ruminating in it. So I'm a big advocate of what I call the middle path, okay? So this is a spiritual teaching, the middle path approach. It's not about ruminating in the challenging emotion for hours and hours and days and years. It is about working with it. So again, we want to be the transformers, the alchemists of difficult emotions. And just be careful, because there's a couple aspects of the human psyche that can get in the way when we're working with difficult emotions intentionally. There's two aspects that I want to not necessarily warn you of, but bring into your awareness so you can notice when they pop up, are the victim and the judge. So the victim is that inner wounded child part of you that feels victimized, that feels like you didn't get what you needed, your needs weren't met, perhaps you were neglected or abused, and it's that victim of, the inner wounded child lashing out through the story of victimization, okay? So there's the victim part of us, and most of us have that piece that rears its head at times, some more strong than others depending on our childhood experiences. The other aspect is the judge. So I also call the judge the inner critic. So for me, yes, I experience the victim, but the judge is out of control at times. The inner critic, she, likes to assess constantly. You're feeling sad again? Get yourself together. So your inner critic may have its specific tone. Your inner critic is the voice that's constantly assessing how you did, assessing, who you are, judging other people, judging situations. And it can be very insidious, that inner judge. So I just want to bring those two aspects of the psyche into your awareness so you can, pinpoint it when they arise. And these two aspects can get in the way and block our ability to effectively work with those difficult emotions. And the victim and the judge, they can keep us attached and fused with the identity of those difficult emotions. For example, I have a dear friend who lost her child, and it was a tragic situation. Her child was about 12 years old, and she's been in this place of grief for a handful of years. And she's really having a hard time kind of moving through it, right? And I really believe, and in conversations with her, it's that inner victim that keeps her so low and so fused in that space, and that's just where she is. It's not good or bad, but we can begin to see how these inner aspects of ourselves really keep us stuck to difficult emotions, or in a place where we're repressing them and pushing them away. So I want to offer a meditation practice that can help you really transform difficult emotions that come up for you. And this is a practice that you can use in your day-to-day life. You can use it consistently to help move into and through those challenging emotions that come up. So if you think about the element of water and how water transforms, we can freeze water, water can evaporate. This is where we use the element of water to become a healing element within us. So we possess all of the 4 elements in this embodied system, okay? We have fire, so we receive energy from the sun. We have water, so our body is 70 to 80% water. So that's a big aspect of us. That's why, when the full moon comes, we can feel different energies, and we can feel things moving through us, emotions moving through us. Okay, we are earth. We're made of the same elements as Mother Earth. So she is what we call the Great Mother. We come from her. And then there is air. So the air around us, the atmosphere is a part of us. We breathe air. So all of these elements, these 4 elements, are part of our physical existence, our energetic existence. And we can use elementals to help us work with difficult emotions. And we're going to use the transformation of water. So I'm going to guide you into this practice of really dissolving difficult emotion. So this is the dissolving meditation. And all you need to do is listen to my voice and allow really my voice to become your voice as you're guided into meditation. If your mind wanders, no judgment, simply bring your awareness back into the sound of my voice and we'll move through it. So wherever you are, I just want you to find yourself in a comfortable seated position. And just begin to feel your body in whatever space you're in. Feeling yourself relax and release. If you're seated, so you can do this seated or lying down. If you're seated, you want your spine to be upright, crown of the head towards the sky, chin level with the earth. And if you feel like you need more energy, you can allow the palms to face up. If you need to feel more grounded, if you're feeling a little off or frenetic, stressed, palms down on the knees or thighs. We'll begin and end with 3 chimes of the bell, okay? Just embracing a beginner's mind in this moment, if this is a new practice for you, which it probably is, the dissolving meditation. Begin to bring your attention into the breath, if it's not there already. We'll begin with mindfulness of breathing. Inhaling through the nostrils, sensing the moment the air touches the tips of the nostrils, beginning to roll into the lungs, expanding the lungs in all directions. And then perhaps you feel the pause at the top of the breath when your lungs are full, and then you exhale through the nostrils again, releasing and relaxing into the moment. So it becomes this ebb and flow, this receiving and releasing. Receiving what you need through the inhale, peace, presence, and releasing through the exhale, releasing stress and tension. Inhale through the nostrils, receiving peace and presence. Exhale through the nostrils, letting go of stress and tension. And stay with this ebb and flow of receiving and releasing for a few more deep, slow, mindful breaths. You may even notice any areas of the body where you're gripping, where you're holding tension and stress. And you invite that area to soften as you exhale the tension and stress from that space in the body. You begin to shift your attention from thought into embodied presence. We do that by directing and sustaining our attention on the body rather than on the stream, the incessant stream of thought. So let's use now the tailbone as our object of awareness. Simply focus on the tailbone, the first energy center of the body. And when you breathe into that area, you're literally grounding your body, your mind, rooting yourself in this moment. And when the mind pops back into the illusion of thought, a thought comes in or a stream of thoughts, just notice and then bring your attention back into the tailbone. You may have to come back into the present moment hundreds of times during a given meditation. No judgment. The mind is wired to create thought. You focus your attention on the base of the spine. You may notice some tingling, some pulsating in the base of the spine as you breathe into that area. Just stay with that. And now I want you to bring into the forefront of your mind a person or a situation that triggers an uncomfortable or highly difficult emotion for you. This could be a fight that you recently had, a conflict, Maybe it's a conflictual situation at work or with a friend, family member. But bring to mind a situation or memory or a person that triggers difficult emotions for you. And if you notice any resistance, that's completely normal. Just move past the resistance, move into it and out of it, still choosing to bring up this person, memory, or situation. And take a few moments to do that. And fully allow the difficult emotions to arise, whether that's anger, resentment, frustration, sadness, grief, rage, shame, embarrassment, jealousy. Whatever that difficult emotion or those emotions are, allow them to arise. Notice where they live in your body. Perhaps they live in the heart. Or the belly, the diaphragm. They may live in the shoulders. And tension in your jaw. Just notice where these challenging emotions live within you now. Bring your attention into that area of the body now. And imagine this little irritation. Maybe it looks like a little black or foggy ball of energy. Maybe it's murky green, stagnant energy. But going into the area of the body where you're holding it, notice what it looks like. And breathe into it without judgment. Let go of any judgment of these challenging experiences. Begin to see how this difficult energy for you, this difficult emotion, begins to morph into a small globe or a small block of ice. Maybe even a golden block of ice made of gold, if that's accessible. So feel how that difficult emotion morphs and transforms into that globe or block of ice. And as you breathe with each inhale now, allow the breath to dissolve that block of ice into water. Beginning to trickle and melt that solid block or globe. Drop by drop, melting. Eventually turning the entire block or globe of ice into water. And now with each breath, we begin to dissolve the water, to evaporate the water into gas, into water vapor. You begin to see drop by drop. The water evaporates. Stay with the visualization. Notice where the mind is, bringing all of your focus back into this area. We're dissolving this challenging, painful emotion from water to gas. Stay with the breath. With each breath, another drop evaporates. Until every drop of this difficult emotion evaporates. And now we must release it from the body. So as you inhale to the crown of the head, allow all of that water vapor to come to the crown. And as you exhale through the mouth, release the negative emotion. 3 more times. Inhale to the crown. Inhaling all of the remnants of that negative emotion. Exhaling through the mouth. Letting go of the vapor. Letting go. Inhale 2 more times. To the crown of the head. Even tensing the face, tensing the shoulders, and exhale that difficult emotion out of the mouth. Last one here. Breath retention. Pausing for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release from the mouth now. Feeling yourself return to organic, natural breath. Feeling relaxation in that area of the body. Feeling a freeing, a liberation of this physical existence with that challenging emotion. We have the ability to dissolve the emotions that stand in the way of our greatest joy and contentment, peace, and abundance. We must pay mindful, compassionate attention to these emotions that arise to teach us some of our greatest lessons. Return to natural breath now, no effort needed. Feeling the rise and fall of the chest and the belly as you breathe. Relax the body, relax the breath. May we continue to invite all emotions into the door of our consciousness with compassion, with acceptance, with love, for they are here to teach us. As you breathe into your own heart space, perhaps you feel a sense of gratitude for your courage to go inward and to work with these difficult emotions. It takes a warrior's heart to do so, and you've chosen to. Taking a few more deep, slow breaths. And in the words of Rumi, you are not a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in a single drop. Vast, deep, and powerful. On the next inhale, begin to bring some mindful movements into the fingers and toes. Bringing yourself back into the space you're in. very slowly. We want to treat all of our transitions like their own meditations. So that was the dissolving meditation for difficult emotions. You can continue to work with this practice as you become your alchemist, the alchemist of challenging emotions that arise in service of your greatest awakening, your greatest personal and spiritual growth. And again, as humans, none of us are exempt from pain. We are here to move toward the pain in order to learn, to evolve, to expand. So thank you so much for joining me for this workshop on transforming difficult emotions. Namaste, Aho, Satnam.
I bring you greetings from the Renaissance Church of Christ in Atlanta, Georgia, where Dr. Orpheus J. Hayward is our phenomenal minister. I welcome you to our online Women of Faith conference. You know, we had to get creative during the COVID and the quarantine, so we welcome you wherever you are, and I feel your spirit with me in this empty room, and hopefully you can feel my love and my spirit as well. I want to thank the organizers for undertaking this online massive conference, and I appreciate you having me as a speaker today. I am Stella Shaw Wilson. I was born and raised in Jackson, Tennessee. I'm a graduate of Tuskegee Institute. I have a master's degree and an educational specialist degree in education. I'm married to Robert Wilson III for 48 years. We've been together 50, but we've been married for 48 years. And out of this union, we have 3 children, 5 grandchildren. We have been doing marriage ministry for over 20 years. It's our passion, and we love ministering to couples throughout the country. My topic is communication tips for a healthy marriage relationship. The goal of this session is to focus on healthy communication in marriage. No matter where you are on your communication journey in your marriage, there is always room for improvement. I know for 48 years, we've had to do a lot of improvement, and we're continually working on our communication skills. Today, we're going to look at why communication is important, what a lack of communication will do to your marriage, as well as effective communication strategies. There is a quote that says, "Communication to a relationship is like oxygen to life. Without it, it dies." In a relationship, when communication starts to phase, everything else follows. Marriage was originated as a part of God's design for human mankind. In Genesis 2:18, 22 through 25, God said that it is not good that man should be alone. I will create him a helpmeet. In Mark 10:7 through 9, he tells us to leave, to cleave, and to become one. As we look at communication, I wanted to look at the definition from Webster. And it says, it's a process. Did you get it? It's a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of words, symbols, and even nonverbal exchange. In communication, you have the sender, the message, and the recipient. Now, the complexity of communication is that each person may receive a different message, meaning, or don't get the same understanding. A great relationship has great communication. This means knowing how to effectively express yourself, how to listen properly, and practice these skills. After 48 years of marriage, we're still working on our communication. There are different seasons in your marriage, which brings about different challenges and different topics that you must communicate on. So it is always evolving. One has to be intentional and want to improve their communication skills. As we look in the Bible, there are a few positive qualities that we need to address. Edification, building up of others. In Ephesians 4:29, it tells us, do not let unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only when it is helpful for building up that may benefit those who listen. Gentleness, in Proverbs 25:15, through patience, as a ruler can be persuaded, and a gentle tongue can break a bone. A gentle tongue can break a bone. My mother always told me, you can tell anybody what you want to say, just do it in the right way. We have to speak truth. In Ephesians 4:25, it tells us that each one of us must put off falsehood and speak truthfully. I always say, is it kind? Is it true? And is it even necessary? You know, sometimes in communication, we'll say things that's not even necessary. It doesn't need to be said. So we have to be slow to speak. In James 1:19 and 20, it says that everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. For man's anger does not bring about righteousness, life that God desires. Sometimes we get it backward. We are so quick to speak and we don't listen. Why communication is important in a marriage? We must first understand the significance of communication and why it is so vital to marriage in order to see the reason that we need to improve. If you don't see the end result and the reason it needs to improve, so often we miss the mark. In mentoring couples, doing numerous marriage classes since 1998 with over 400 and some couples that have gone through our classes, numerous retreats throughout the country, the most frequent concern is we don't communicate. He or she, they don't understand me. It's the lack of communication. We know that no communication is all. It's still communicating non-verbally that you aren't saying anything. If your marriage is open, honest, and transparent, you have a great chance of being joyous and having a healthy relationship. The foundation of marriage is love, trust, respect, and commitment. These are the expressions that make marriage great, and the foundation of our communication skills are built. Verbal, nonverbal, and physical acts are all under the same communication umbrella. Everyone likes to hear words of affirmation, admiration, and gratitude, as well as feeling as if you're being heard, understood, and listened to. Men and women communicate differently, and we must understand those differences and embrace them. Don't shy away from them, but embrace the differences between men and women, and the way we communicate. God designed it that way so we can learn to be more Christ-like. Because if anything can make you be more Christ-like, is dealing in marriage relationships. Men want the basic facts. Women, we want to give the whole situation and the backdrop. I know when I'm talking to Robert, he says, just what's the bottom line? Just give me the facts. I don't need all of that. But for me, I need to tell the whole story. I was reading a devotion, The Confident Woman by Joyce Myers. And I thought this was interesting when she said, when a woman disagrees with a man, he takes it as disapproval and ignites his defenses. Men only want advice after they have done everything they can do. Women, when we give advice too soon or too often, it causes him to lose his sense of power. He may become lazy or insecure. Men are motivated and empowered. That's what we want to do. We want to empower our husbands to feel needed, to show them respect. Now, women are motivated when we feel cherished. We like to feel that we're understood, that we're heard, and we have those gentle touches. We must look at ourselves and evaluate our communication style based on your upbringing. How were you raised? What did communication look like in your household? Did you have a father? Were you raised by a grandmother? Were you raised by a single mom? What did communication look like in your household? How did your family communicate? Did everybody talk at one time to get their points across? Or did you have wholesome communication? We know that how your family communicated and your cultural style has a lot to do with how you communicate. So I ask you again, what does your communication style look like in your family? When sometimes we bring past communication experiences and baggage as well into the now, we got to let the past be the past. We have to move forward if we want to get better. It's important to realize if your spouse is doing something that irritates you or is not beneficial to the relationship, you must be able to talk about it. If you don't, it's just going to fester. We have to be open and honest and transparent. If not, it's going to fester. It's going to cause bitterness, hurt, and anger. We have to communicate even when it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it is uncomfortable. I know in my relationship with Robert for over 48 years, we had to have a lot of uncomfortable talks and communication regarding finances, raising of the children. What did I expect from him? What did he expect from me? The only way to get through those challenges is you have to talk about it. One of the best ways to heal is just get it all out. Get it all out. You must look at what is hindering you and what is controlling you. Is it your ego? Are you selfish? Are you prideful? Or has your humility gone out the door? In Galatians 5:2-23, I'm not going to read it all, but it talks about the fruits of the Spirit. Do you have the fruits of the Spirit in your relationship with your spouse? Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And those who are in Christ have crucified the flesh with its passion and desires. If we live in the Spirit, let us walk in the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another. In our marriage, you have to look and see, who is the enemy? Who is the enemy? Ladies, your husband is not the enemy here. Your husband is not the enemy. You have to know who you're fighting and what you're up against. In Ephesians 6:10-12, it tells us to be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you can withstand against the wiles of the devil. For we don't wrestle with flesh and blood, but against principalities, against the powers and rulers of the darkness and the wickedness in heavenly places. When we're in confusion and all discombobulated in our marriage, we must realize that it is the devil is taking residence up in your home. He has opened the door. He has come in. He's sitting down at your table, in your bedroom, and in your life, and in your home. He wants to deceive us and convince us that our spouse is the enemy. His goal is to divide us and convince us that there is no hope. He wants to take the focus off of God and destroy what God has ordained. In my 48 years of marriage, Satan tried to come in, but I told him, honey, you better get on out of here because you're not coming up in this house. You're not coming up in here. We had to fight for our marriage. We had to fight for what we believed in. We had to fight for our convictions and our commitment to each other. We have to not be so easily to give up. More often than not, we have removed God from the midst of our marriage and let the most important weapon out of our warfare. We left it out. We left out prayer. The Bible tells us to pray about everything in Philippians. It tells us to pray about everything. Is your marriage important enough that you'll pray about it? Even your communication? Even how you deal with your husband on a daily basis. We have to pray for our spouses. And we have to pray and believe that God will hear us. We have to decide to work as a team instead of competing against each other. It's not a competition. We're a team. We're a team. We have to rely on each other. We have to really stop competing against each other and begin working in the process of what does work. It's often said that when you continue to do the same thing over and over and over again, and you get the same results, is insanity. We have to say, this isn't working. I have to make some changes. What can I do as a spouse to make some changes? I know I did. In our relationship of 48 years, I had to make changes that were for the betterment of the team so that we could work together in harmony. Freedom comes when you decide and pray on what is going to control you. What's controlling you? What's keeping you from having a great communication style in your marriage? You have to decide to let God be in the midst of your marriage. In talking with numerous couples, some couples will say, well, I don't believe in that. God, we done kicked him to the curb. Well then, if you're going to kick God to the curb, then you're going to see a different outcome in your relationship than what you want. Because God, in the midst of your marriage, is the key. We have to realize that neither one of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. Robert's not perfect. And that you will have conflict. That's inevitable. But how you relate to the conflict, what is your attitude about it, is what makes the difference. There are 3 stages of marriage. Intimacy, where we love, where we all want to be. We have conflict. We don't like conflict. And withdrawal. You definitely don't want withdrawal, because that's when you say, I don't care. I don't care if you come. I don't care if you go. I don't care what happens, so be it. But most of us will fluctuate between intimacy and conflict. Conflict isn't all bad because you're still communicating. It's how you handle the conflict and what is your attitude about the conflict. Spouses are not mind readers, and we should not assume. Oh, you should have known I felt that way. How? Did you tell me? No. But when you tell me, then it's my responsibility to do better. Sometimes we're fearful of how they will think or how they will respond. I call it sometimes we are protective liars. Protective liars. Oh, it's not that bad. You don't tell the whole truth because you don't think they can handle it. But a relationship in communication is built on honesty and trust. And a lot of times what you think they couldn't handle, you get it all wrong. They don't respond in the way that you thought they would have. In our nonverbal communication expressions, we have eye contact, facial expressions, body language. All show if we are open to hearing and listening what is said and that you're willing to work through the conversation. If I'm talking to you and my spouse and his eyes are all over everywhere and not on me, children say, look at me. Facial expressions. Do you have a scowl on your face? Are you rolling your neck? Are you pursing your lips? Or the body language? All show if we are open and willing to work through this situation. Now, you got to be careful because how you respond can escalate or de-escalate a conversation. You can set it off. You hear me? You can set it off, honey. And I know, and you know what sets your spouse off. So we have to be aware of how we sit, our posture. Are we using the phone? You know, the social media now, you're trying to have a conversation and the phone rings and they stop listening to you and go see and to text what's going on. That says the message, I'm not important. What I have to say is not important and it can escalate a situation. Communication is important and is the basis for a healthy marriage. It's how you connect. We all want connection in our marriage with our spouses. We all want to share our thoughts, our views. It's how we settle disputes and convey that you are heard and listened to and that you are loved. Without communication, ladies, we become silent sufferers and live like roommates. Well, I ain't gonna say nothing. He ain't gonna say nothing. He in his room, I'm in my room, and we just gonna stick these things out and we ain't gonna say nothing to each other. You're silent suffering. You're not happy. You're not joyous in your relationship. That's because you're not communicating, and whatever has entered into your lives, into your relationship, you haven't dealt with it. Life enters. You know, when you were dating, you couldn't wait to see and then heart throb, and you couldn't get off the phone with each other. I know when Robert and I were dating in Tuskegee back in the late 60s, we didn't have cell phones. But he would come see me in the dorm, and we would talk all night until the dorm mother would put him out. Then I would go to the window at the top of the steps and watch my handsome husband walk across campus and couldn't wait till we could see each other the next day and talk some more. But what happened? Life got in the way. When we got married, some of the communication went out the way. There was children, finances, jobs, responsibility that we had, and you stopped communicating and dating like you did. You can get in a rut. You can take each other for granted and say to yourself, well, this is just how it's going to be. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can get out of that rut and you can develop better communication skills. God is here to help, but you must take yourself out of the way. You have to start making your spouse a priority. Focus more on how you treat each other than what you disagree on. Be grateful. If you focus more on the negativity in your relationship, then that's all you're going to see. You may say, but my spouse is this, he's that, he don't do this, he don't do that. You may say it, but your spouse is this or that, but you have to take control of you. You must demonstrate what you want to see. You have to practice on showing respect and meeting the needs. How many of you really know what your spouse needs from you? How many of you really know? We teach that in the class. And no, when we took the class, Robert didn't know exactly what I needed. He thought I needed flowers. I didn't need no flowers. I just wanted him to say, Stella, I love you. When I asked him, Robert, do you love me? I bring my check home. You got food in the refrigerator. I appreciate it, but that wasn't what I needed. So you have to express to your husband what you need and not be afraid and fearful to tell them what you need. Do you need admiration? Do you need affection? Do you need communication, conversation? Do you need financial support? Do you need domestic support? What are your expectations around your needs? In our marriage, I thought Robert didn't need domestic support. That's crazy, isn't it? How could I even think that? But I did. I felt because he liked to clean. He liked to do all of the household chores. He washed the clothes, fold the clothes, put the clothes up. He mopped the floor. He'd take the trash out. He cleaned the toilets. He dusted. He vacuumed. He did it all. And I was a happy camper. However, in our conversation, he said, Stella, could you help me? I just need some domestic support. So I knew that was important to him. So what did I have to do? I had to change my attitude and thinking once we discussed it. And once we discussed our expectations, we had a discussion just the other night on expectations. We're in the COVID quarantine. I'm cooking breakfast, I'm cooking lunch, and I'm cooking dinner, and I'm tired of cooking. Okay? So I asked him, Robert, would you help me cook? Just cook a meal today. I'm not cooking. He said, I'm not cooking. I haven't cooked for 48 years, and I'm not going to cook. I'm not going to start now, even with COVID. So I had to change my attitude and think, well, I can deal with that. He does everything else. So I can cook him a meal. All he wants is a baked potato, a can of English peas, and a piece of chicken or fish. That's easy. I can do that. I had to change my attitude about what he needed from me and what I needed from him. You can't control your spouse. Only God can control your spouse. We get it out of order. God says it's God, spouse, children, work, and everything else. But what do? We put children sometimes before God. We say we got God first. But in actuality, if you look at your calendar and you look at your activities and all, what do they all center around? Your children. Where does your spouse fit in? We have to make him a priority. There's a quote that says, it's not distance that keeps you apart, but the lack of communication. You've heard some of these nuggets before. You probably have heard them over and over again. But I'm going to give you some tips and nuggets for better communication. The first thing is you have to pray together daily and ask God for wisdom. You should pray together. You can pray separately. Pray for your husband. We know that prayer works. We know that making change, we know that change isn't easy because you've been doing something for so long. And so to change may feel uncomfortable, but is it worth it? I'm here to tell you the change that you make in yourself will benefit your spouse and your marriage and your family. We need to spend more quality time together. We need to rekindle that love. When you're spending quality time together, you're talking, you're happy, you're not thinking about all of the challenges. We need to forgive. We need to replace bitterness with love and respect. We need to give our spouses full attention. We should not text our spouses. This is just me. We should not text our spouses when we have serious conversations that need to happen. Why? Because the texting message, when you text, the message of what you're trying to send can get lost in what you're trying to convey. It's okay to text your spouse sweet nothings and hopeful things that may happen later in the day. However, if there are situations that you must talk to your spouse about, the best thing to do it is face to face. Because you have the eye contact, you can reach out and touch. You can give that gentleness that's needed. We were talking to a couple one time and they said, talk? We don't talk. And I said, well, what do you do? They said, we text. I said, oh my God, texting. That's why you don't understand each other, because the message has gotten lost in the texting and in the translation. You have to monitor your Facebook, TV, and social media. Since COVID, your family now has time to really spend together and to reconnect. But how are you using this time? Are you more on social media, looking at all the news? Are you on social media, looking at all the posts? Or are you taking time to really reconnect and to have family time and to spend more time together? I asked a family the other day, I said, what have you learned through this COVID? And it was interesting, the comments that I got. They said, we spend more family time together. My father's home. We do more things together. We play games. We go for a walk. So you have to incorporate that into your reconnection with your spouse. Don't interrupt. Boy, oh boy, this was a biggie for me that I had to overcome. Because when Robert was talking, sometimes it would take him too long, you know what I mean, to get out what he wanted to say. So I would interrupt my thoughts, my opinions, and really not listening. And what did that do? Shut it down. Shut it down. So we have to learn not to interrupt. We have to create a neutral space. We have to take time to really sit and talk and give undivided attention. You have to know, ladies, when is the best time for this conversation? It may not be time he comes in the door. You have to set the tone. Admit when you're wrong. Be a big enough person to say, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. And take responsibility for it. And help come up with solutions. You may say that conflict is not the important thing. But if you don't address it, it's going to resurface over and over and over again, which means you haven't gotten to the root of it. So sometimes you have to get to the root of it. You have to stay focused. You have to stick to the issue at hand and not bring up the past situations. You know, just like 5 years ago when such and such happened, or last week such and such happened, you have to stick to the issue at hand. Make it a priority to talk intimately with your spouse daily. And I keep saying this, have fun. Never stop dating. Never stop dating. Never stop making those love deposits into your spouse's love bank. Show gratitude. Ladies, we have to learn to choose our battles. Sometimes some of the stuff we argue and fuss and fight about isn't even worth it. Do you just want to have the last word? Well, I'm going to tell you, you can have the last word, but you won't have any peace. And he's not even hearing the last word because he done stopped listening. He's not even hearing what you're saying. We have to use I statements to take the pressure off our spouse. Instead of saying, when you did this, you made me angry. When you did this, da 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 da. Instead, use I messages. It softens the touch. Instead of saying, I feel disappointed, Robert, when you didn't tell me how great I looked going to the banquet. And my feelings were hurt. Sometimes we have to clarify. Did I understand it correctly when you said? We have to rephrase. Repeat what you thought you heard. Repeat what you thought you heard. So you're having dialogue. You're having dialogue. You're having conversation in a non-threatening way. Communication in marriage is just one of the concerns that we have in our relationships. These were just a few tips to bring to your remembrance because I know you've heard them before, but it's always good to hear them again. Sometimes in our relationship, Robert and I, we walk around the house and say, you know what? We need to have a class, not for them, not for the students, but for us, to bring to our remembrance. We need to strike a godly desire to embrace healthy communication and a deeper communication. Sometimes it's necessary to seek out a certified expert, a Christian counselor or therapist, to help you understand and to work through and to get to the root of your issues. And that's okay. I encourage that. We need to have an open mind and to keep pressing on. God will help you overcome. With God, all things are possible. Healthy communication is a journey. And just keep striving to win. You may have some roadblocks. You may have some hurdles. But just keep pressing. Keep pressing with God's help. Choose to make choices that will transform your communication and your marriage. I have an assignment for you. As an ex-educator, I always have to give an assignment, you know. I want you to evaluate yourself. I want you to look in your mirror or do a CAT scan and get on the inside of you and write down the things that are actually hindering you from having a great communication style with your husband. Then I want you to write 2 things that you will implement to improve your communication skills. Just 2. We ain't gonna try to do the whole boat, but if you start off with 2, then you can progress. And pray for your husband. Pray for yourself. And pray that God will continue to bless you in your marriage. And it's been my honor, it's been my pleasure to spend this time with you out in cyberland. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you for listening and tuning in. And we're the Renaissance Church of Christ, where we have a dynamic marriage ministry. Thank you so much.
Say I thank you, Lord. Ooh, I really thank you. I do. Thank you, Lord, 'cause you've been so good to me. I say thank you. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Hey, I really want to say, I just want to thank you, Lord. Listen. God, you woke me up so soon this morning. You did, God, and you started me on my way. I just really want to say thank you, Lord. Oh, thank you, Lord, for giving me just one more day, yeah. But listen, you loved me, even though I was a sin, yeah. Yes, you did, God. You came to this earth and you died for me. So right now, God, I want to say thank you, Lord, for giving up your life on Calvary. Yeah, and from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you, God. Oh, thank you, Lord. You didn't have to do it, but you did it anyway, God. Yeah. Thank you, God. I thank you, Lord. From the bottom of my heart, I say, I really want to say thank you. Thank you, Lord. If I can, one more time, I pour out my heart and say, thank you. Oh, thank you, God. Yeah, for everything that you've done for me. Lord, thank you, Lord. God, you watched over me every day of my life, God. Oh, because you love me, and I just want to thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord.
Wow, ladies, what an incredibly impactful day. My name is Carmen Williams, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the Ministry of Mary, Women of Faith Ministry at the Renaissance Church of Christ. And we want to extend a very special thank you for joining us today. And we hope and pray that you'll join us tomorrow for day 2 of our conference at 11 a.m. Let us pray. Dear Father in heaven, first of all, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for another day of living and learning. Thank you for this amazing conference. And thank you for these amazing women who have shared their knowledge and insight with us today. And most of all, we thank you for your son, Jesus, and his ultimate sacrifice so that we may have the gift of eternal life. Dear Father, please keep us safe and protect us throughout the rest of this day and throughout this weekend. Please continue to bless our conference. Please allow it to continue to uplift us and to inspire us. Please help us to support each other and learn from each other. And please help us to have unconditional love for each other, as you have shown us. Dear Father, please allow us to have peace in the midst of every situation. Thank you for your continuous love And thank you for always being by our side. It's in your Son's Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Thank you so much again, ladies. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for day 2 of our conference at 11 a.m. Goodbye.
It's a new day, and we're glad about it.